Welcome to the Comic Binge. I am your host, Paul Herman, and today I have got a very special guest that I've been really lazily and meaning to get him on the show for a long time. And I'll introduce him shortly, but if you haven't already, I'd appreciate everyone. Go and subscribe to the Comic Binge. Appreciate everyone who already has, but if you haven't, it only just makes sense, spider sense, that is, right? To go and subscribe to the channel, like the videos, etc., etc. And if you want to be super baller, you can always go on and check out all our playlist section here. We've got tons and tons and tons of playlist stuff, which I'll show you right here. We've got, like for instance here, I've got a wonderful playlist here for all our DC content, which you can go through. I got it for Marvel, I got it for Independent, I got all kinds of shenanigans going on here, and you can always find out all these videos on here. If you're a comic book fan, I promise you're gonna find something you're gonna like and want to watch and listen to us discuss. I'll really quickly, we don't really spoil much things. We just try to go in and try to analyze the comics as much as we can without spoiling it, because I want people to read the comics because I love the comic medium. But enough about me talking. I want to introduce our guest here. I've got Kurtis. Is it Findlay? Am I saying right? Findlay, right?
That's right. Yep, Findlay.
Okay, I can't pronounce anything. If you've been watching a long time, I can't pronounce anything. So, anyway, you are I put in the notes, you are a comic book expert, my friend. Like
Okay.
That's what I think. I mean, I see people like you analyze things, you go through the epic lines, and you have everything down to a T. And you love comic books, and I love that about you. And so I'm like, man, like Kurtis is the man, and like also like you're doing all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I'm glad to have you finally on. We started talking before the show. For those who know, me and Kurtis started just talking, and he was like, we should just record this. I'm like, yeah, you're right. We should just record this. So I'm gonna shut my mouth here and just I really quickly. I met Kurtis through we are associated with the Thunderquack Podcast Network, which I'm on the Saga Continues. You obviously have your show, the Epic Marvel Podcast, or just Epic Podcast, comic podcast now, right?
Well, I'm toying with changing the Epic Marvel Podcast to just calling it the Epic Comic Podcast, because there are some other really great books out there that we should be that I would love to talk about. But honestly, I haven't actually even been podcasting for a couple of years, just because I have been so busy with a bunch of other stuff. It was the case when I first started. I was a stay-at-home dad, and had some part-time gigs on the side here and there, and taking care of my kids and stuff, and I had time to do a podcast. But the podcast actually lent itself to meeting more people in the industry, and actually getting some work here and there, doing some things, and now I'm working pretty much full-time with a comic book publisher and a couple of comic book publishers, and doing stuff. So the podcast has had to stay on the side. All of this stuff is still there. I've got 200 episodes that people can go and listen to, a lot of creator interviews, and one of these days I'd like to get back to it, but it's just so time consuming. I am very nitpicky about the editing process, because I like it to be professional sounding, and I take out all of the ums and all of this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So if it's not going to meet that standard, then I don't know. These live streams are the way to go. I think it's just this is uncut, unfiltered, and I can just kind of let it go and have that on the YouTube channel.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say you do all these great unboxings on YouTube. So I kind of feel like you said you haven't done the podcast. Like technically you're right, but I mean, like I'd say your live streams are a part of that. Like you said, live streams are kind of like the future. Or not future, the present at this point, right? So I mean, I don't know. I like you. I just had like our first kid, or probably only kid. That's fine. And I got this idea to do this channel, and long story short, I was like, well, I really want to do this and everything, but I don't have any time. And the only time and like you, I'm really meticulous with videos that when I first started doing it, I'm like, I don't have time to do this, man. I just don't. So I finally said, you know what? Screw it. Just live stream it for a while until my daughter's like, Dad, get away from me. I'm doing my own thing. And I'm like, all right, do whatever. So I have like more time on my hands. I'll be like, I'm just doing live streams. I only have time for. So I totally get it, which I love that you do your unboxings. You should do more like just hangouts, I'd say. I think you do a
Yeah,
little
and
bit.
and that's the thing that I miss the most about the podcast is because I had a bunch of really great co-hosts, and we would do deep dives into each of the issue and talk about the art of comic making and just the way the characters are acting and whatever,
Sure.
and I miss doing that. So if I can figure out, I have to set aside time and such, but yeah, live streaming some of those conversations, that's not a bad idea, and probably should do something like that.
And now that I give you that idea, you're gonna have me on. I'm gonna guilt trip you, trip you
Okay.
about that forever. So,
Sure. Yeah,
so
that sounds great.
So, I'll let people know, like, so because of how me and Curtis met through like a mutual, a friend, acquaintance, I quickly, realized he introduced me to the world of epics, which as a comic book fan since, forever, I was telling Curtis that I had a number of trades, a decent amount of trades, but I wasn't like, I went nuts after I had my daughter, which is, I don't know why I did, but I just went nuts with it.
That's when you have a surplus of money.
Yeah, I knew it was going to evaporate soon. So I was like, I better go in right now before it goes away. Right. So,
Yeah.
because I was reading mostly digital, but I really missed the physical like part of it, like reading a comic and learning the layout of the artist and all that stuff, which we can get into. I really I really got into and really realized I was missing a lot with digital because of that. I love digital still.
Absolutely.
I still read digital all the time, but I prefer physical when I can. But let's be real, digital is cheap, right? But
Well, yeah,
cheaper.
it's cheap, and for space reasons, a lot of people jump on it. But yeah, the whole I do a lot of my modern comic reading on Marvel Unlimited, and
Mhm.
I do it on my phone because I don't have well, I have an iPad, but the kids are usually using it or whatever. But
Word.
yeah. But the whole like zooming in on a panel and just flicking through the different panels one at a time, that really ruins the what the artist has um how they've laid out the entire page, their vision for the page. um like if you open up one of these books, you're supposed to look at the whole page
Exactly. Yeah.
all at once. And
Hmm.
then sometimes, in some cases, even two pages.
Double
And if
spread.
you're only
Yeah.
going by one at a time, there are lots of little details in the way that stories are told that you will probably miss or skip over. So while digital is functional and cost effective, there's nothing like actually reading the printed comic.
Yeah, and I think that to me is what I realized that I was missing out. And listen, for the record, like I don't mind the panel to panel. I kind of like I was reading Day Tripper today, because
Great book.
great book. Spoiler alert for those who there will be a future show in a couple weeks. Me and Angshiman from For the Love of Comics are going to be reviewing
Great
that.
guy.
Oh, dude, Angshiman is the goat. He is seriously
Yep.
the goat. Maybe the nicest, maybe a human being alive. That's just what I've told him. He just thinks I'm just buttering him up. I'm like, no, dude. I think like the energy around that man is just like off the charts positive goodness. So
Yep.
if he somehow has an evil bone in his body, he's doing a great job of hiding it. So anyway, we're gonna be doing a double feature. It's gonna be, he gave me Day Tripper, I gave him Craven's Last Hunt.
Okay.
So ironically,
Also a
Nick,
great book.
yeah, and ironically, Curtis, since you read both, I think you could understand. There's a kind of a weird connection that I didn't realize between them. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. But
Okay.
yeah, that's gonna be a great show. Anyway, but like anyway, so we were talking about trades and everything, and I love panel to panel, and I was reading Day Tripper through Hoopla, which is the reading it through digital means, and my eyes are bad, so going panel to panel is chef's kiss sometimes.
For sure.
But like you said, there is a pro and a con, and you definitely lose the appeal by going panel to panel. And I was doing that for many years, actually. I really got into that, and I think there's value there. But like you said, if you're doing panel to panel and you don't at least do the spread, the page out at the very end, you're doing yourself a disservice and the artist of the disservice of the hard work they put in to do a story page of layout of one page. Because the one thing of researching comics, and I love, and as a writer, as a potential writer of comics myself, one day, I really value the story of the artist and how like every page is its own story, like its own, like, from, beginning, middle and end, right. To an extent. And I think that's why I think I realized that I love about when the artist is doing the page layout, how special that really is. And every page is its own like thing, which is really, that's such a unique thing for any medium, right, of storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, and you said people should at least zoom out after you finish reading. Actually, you should zoom out before you zoom into
Fair
the
enough.
panels,
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
because a lot of the time your eye is meant to take in the page as a whole
Mm-hmm.
before you dig into each of the panels individually. Especially with two-page spreads or whatever. And you're like, oh yeah, well, what if there's a spoiler at the end of the page? It's okay. You're supposed to absorb the whole
Sure.
thing as a whole and then kind of dissect it into little bits. That's just kind of the nature of it. So yeah, zoom out first
That's good.
so you can
Yeah.
see the whole thing.
For me, yeah, I think I think that's probably what most people will do and should do. For whatever reason, and I don't read digital all the time. I do a fair amount, but
Yeah.
like for Day Tripper, I usually read just a page, right? Like for me, I usually still keep it to the page. But the thing is, if I can't read very well, if it's small print, like for
No.
whatever,
Yeah, I do it on my phone, so it's like
yeah,
so small.
yeah. There you go. There you go. So anyway, yeah. So like I got to know Kurtis through the Facebook Epic Marvel group, which is fantastic. And I want to say there's been great people on there. I had a guy when I was getting into the epics, which I didn't realize how amazing they were until you basically like your group, and I realized epics are incredible. The chronological, ways they do things, and they format everything to keep all the story coherently with adding different pages from different things. And like, I didn't realize that's what it was. And it was only through like getting into the Star Wars stuff that I realized how meticulous these things are and how rad and how much hard work that is.
Well,
But yeah,
especially the Star Wars ones, because they have all been reordered to
oh,
go in timeline order, and like that's a remarkable job. Mike Hansen, the guy he's in our Facebook group, he did most of the research in putting this stuff in order, and did an incredible job over 50 volumes worth of Star Wars content, putting it
mm-hmm.
all in chronological order from the dawn of the Jedi, even before the dawn of the Jedi, to when Dark Horse lost his license before the Disney stuff.
Yeah, and like and I think that's where and I granted, like with 616 continuity, you're not going to be able to do it as crazy as the Star Wars stuff is, but it's not too far off either, right? So I mean, like, people talking about how they'll double dip for like when they do crossovers and things like that, like, for Spider-Man and whatever. I think it's just brilliant. Like I have the Craven's Last Hunt, where it has like the marriage and stuff like that. Like again, it's I wish that I jumped on the Epic bandwagon a lot sooner. And
Yeah.
you had said like you were lucky you had started 2 years into it, you said?
I can't remember. I think the first one that I bought new was the first Ant-Man volume. Hold on, I have my spreadsheet up right here so I can tell you when that was.
Sorry.
Um, that was in 2015. So the line started in late 2013, and I came on board in mid 2015. So yeah, almost 2 years into it. But at that point, there were only about 20. Looks like 20. There were about 30 volumes that had come out by that point. So I started. Look, and there's only one that was out of print at the time.
Only
It
one.
was Captain America. Oh man, what is it
Is
called?
it the Wolverine one?
Dawn's Early Light. It was Dawn's Early Light. That one was out
Okay.
of print. That was the one that I had a hard time tracking down, but all the rest of them were fine.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, and it's funny because we were talking about Star Wars before, and you were telling me how like they overprinted everything. for because of the movies were coming out. Because I was telling you, I was finding all these epics of Star Wars on for half price books, and everything for like super cheap, like $18. I'm like, take it, take. And I got caught up and I was going to bring up to the Facebook group because there was a very nice gentleman. Right when I had my daughter, I was missing like only a few epics at the time for Star Wars. And one of them was New Republic Volume 1. And he was like, hey, yeah, I'll give you mine, bro. I'm like, I'll sell you mine. I'm like, oh, cool. How much? He's like, just pay for shipping. I'll send it to you for free. Merry Christmas. I was like,
wow. Yeah.
I'm like,
that's amazing.
Super awesome people. I do think I did get scammed on one of your guys's though. I think I did. I don't know. He said he sent it to, he sold me the Clone Wars and something else for like a decent price. And I sent him the money and I never got it. And he gave me the tracking number and everything, but it was weird. I had some weird mail stuff too at the time. I don't remember, but then I think he disappeared.
Unfortunately you can't escape that. It's even in the nicest groups, the bad guys infiltrate in there.
Right. But it's been a great group. Like Phil, I forgot his last name. He's always updating like when they're announcing. It's great. And you guys do a good job, and Omar do a great job with that stuff too. So I mean, like, it's a great group. I always love. I don't post as much as I want to, but like I every once in a while I'll lurk. Like when they announced they announced like some of the new Ghost Rider epics. I was like, oh hell yeah! Like I was like getting stoked about that. So, which is by the way,
we have another announcement show coming up tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow morning. Omar and I on the Near Mint Condition YouTube channel will be announcing some new epic collections. I think we're going to talk about 13 of them or so for August and September of 2025.
Wow. So I'm glad. So this is a good segue for this. I have a question for you because we all know we've been fans of comics for a long time, Curtis. I'm assuming you've been. I don't know your whole backstory yet, but like I figure your knowledge is not just from like us cramming of like 5-6 years. You're a lifer like me, right? Like
yes,
we've been doing this for a long time. We've seen lines come and go, right? We've seen but even when they even announced this at the first time, I was like, yeah, cool, whatever. Like Marvel Masterworks kind of here, all over the place, kind of a thing. I'm blown away how long this epic line has gone and only gotten stronger, to be honest.
And that's always a worry because, and Masterworks is the same thing. Masterwork, Curtis, that we'll see. We'll see if it happens tomorrow. The Masterworks is another one where it's like it's still going, even though those volumes have gotten way more expensive over the years. Yeah. But I think that partly because of the Facebook group and the community that's built up around it, Marvel has seen not just great sales, but just a great camaraderie of fans around it, and have decided to keep it going. And the fact that they recently expanded into the modern era epics, just shows the strength of the branding of it. Is like they're willing to keep it going, and I think this is a really good way for them to just now permanently have their archived collections.
Exactly. Right?
Like they don't need to reinvent the wheel now. They can just keep on. Well, Spider-Man or whatever, Morbius has got another movie. Well, we'll just print the Morbius epic collections again, and all of that kind of stuff. Oh, hey, Batman.
Batman. Curtis, crazy.
But yeah, it's really, really great. It's going on 12 years now, I think it is, and no slowing down. It's just fantastic.
I think you bring up a great point that there's camaraderie there, but I think the biggest thing you hit on that I think we'll segue to DC here in a little bit, that I think is brilliant, is that and listen, I think there's value in like just story reprints of like stories, right? Like let's say, I don't know why this came to my head, Curtis, but the Sidekick's Revenge, right? Like something stupid like that. Like obviously not that particularly, but something like that, right? There's value to have those cheap, like somewhat smaller, whatever. But at the same time, when people are like, I want to get into Morbius, God forbid Morbius, that whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, print a couple of
Except
the
that the
Epic
Morbius
collections.
comics are great.
Dude, I need to get back on those '90s ones, man. I need to get back on them.
Yeah.
I always loved the leather. I always preferred the leather purple like thing he had
Yeah.
back in the '90s. But yeah, like just to be able to just reprint those and have them out there for people. Like for Fantastic Four, like I have thank God I have all the Kirby Marvel Fantastic Four comics now. And it's great because when the movie comes out in a couple of months, hopefully they would go back and reprint a bunch of those, and just keep those Fantastic Four epics in stock because it's easy to go, oh, volume 1, volume 3, or like if you're like you hear about, oh, I heard about the Galactus stuff. It's like, oh, there's Galactus right there. You know what I mean? Like it's perfect in my opinion. It's not foolproof necessarily, but it's as good as you're gonna get in this massive world of comics, and it's still easy enough for people who want to get into comics can go, where do I get? Like I'll throw it to you here in a second, but recently I do this like friend comic club that I've had one of my guests on, his name's Zach. We're all good friends with, best friends with another guy we know, and he's a big Spider-Man fan. And we have this comic club where we all like pick different comics, and someone picked Kraven's Last Hunt, and they all bought the Marvel Epic collection. And I kind of I used my Kurtis knowledge here that he taught me everything I know about Epic Marvels and everything, Epic Marvel collection and everything. And it was really fun to read it through and explain. And they all had a great time reading, and they weren't really lost. And and this is the Hobgoblin era, for God's sakes. Like this is like, need I say more?
A lot of that has to do with the style of writing back then, where you could pick up just a random issue and get caught up to speed really, really quick.
Yeah.
And the way that the epics are mapped are really, really good because they will usually put them at the beginning of a creator run or the beginning of a major arc or something like that. So you do get a full story in one volume. That's these 500-page chunks are absolutely perfect for that. And so, yeah, I'm glad that they had a good experience. That is a wild volume, Kraven's Last Hunt, because not only is it Kraven, but which is a very different type of story, but then also, like you said, it's the wrap up and the kind of odds and ends bits of this Hobgoblin era, and then you have the wedding of Peter Parker and Mary Jane in there as well, and it's like there's a lot of stuff in there in that one volume.
Yeah, and but that's great point. I think that's why the Epic line, in my opinion, I think obviously you guys have cultivated a great group and has really had people like myself learn and really love. And I cherry pick epics now. I've converted to basically getting all Star Wars epics that are legends because I collect. Long story short, I collect all the Spider-Man or Star Wars comics, modern Star Wars comics in normal trades. So that because I have a canon shelf that I mix all my media together, which since I moved, I have not been able to organize it yet. But I like to keep them like the thin ones because I can reorganize and put different things in different timelines, whatever.
Right.
Yeah. But with the Legends, I've gone from Star Wars Legends only epics, which is there's a lot. I know it's coming to an end soon. Tier. But I converted to Spider-Man, and so now. Okay. I've got, again, talk about overprints. By the way, I bought this for like $15 4 years ago, like super cheap. Like this is like cheap. And now it's like out of print and like wants like $100 for it. I'm like, you guys are crazy. So, I have converted to Spider-Man epics. I always buy a new one when they come out. I love it. And you guys I'm always really appreciative of you guys on that forum, on that Facebook forum. That's just great. Yeah, I think the Epic line is so brilliant, and like even for like the modern stuff, like even like the fact that you're able to collect a lot of different stories and have that mapping is so critical, and having different comics like again the Kraven's Last Hunt's a great example. The crazy web of Spider-Man, Wolverine Spider-Man was in that epic. Like that's so many great stories are in that epic, and yeah, go ahead.
Interesting note about that Kraven's Last Hunt epic collection is that they were going to put in the honeymoon issue.
I know which one you're
which
talking about.
is
The
a Spectacular Spider-Man Annual, I think.
Yeah, where they go.
That was in
They
the
go off like
original
an
mapping.
island.
Yeah, and then
Uh-huh.
um, there was fans. This was before I had the Epic collection group, so they were on the Masterworks forum, the
Oh
Marvel
wow.
Masterworks forum. People were talking about how it would actually be better if they had the conclusion. There's an epilogue of the Rose storyline that kind of went through the Hobgoblin storyline.
Oh yeah.
The conclusion of that one is in, I think it's a Web of Spider-Man annual, and that one really shouldn't be excluded because it's the whole wrap up of this big long story that's being told through the Amazing Spider-Man Epic collections, and then Marvel saw that, and we're like, you know what, you're right. So let's change it. So they took out the honeymoon issue and replaced it with that one. So it's like they're listening to what the fans and what the community has to say. And there have been a couple of times when uh, they have made changes based on what we have to say. And that's really neat.
Why don't they just keep but now that the issue's like almost lost to time because I had to read that
Well,
issue. Yeah, go ahead.
yes and no. I mean, we've been told by Marvel that Spectacular Spider-Man Epic Collections will come eventually. When that will be, we're not too sure yet, but they will come. And so
I
that
see.
annual will eventually show up in that
In
line there.
but not but see, and this is where the mapping. This is where I'm thinking of the Star Wars mapping opposed to the like the Amazing Spider-Man line. You see what I'm saying? Like that's where I'm getting them crossed up because as I'm reading this, I remember thinking like either they don't have for whatever reason they have the weird rights things maybe they don't want to pay or whatever. I have no idea because I remember I had to read that issue. I did a big chronological Spider-Man reading. A couple when after I had my daughter like a year or so where I started at the very beginning and I read like chronological all the way to the beginning. So I read like Amazing Fantasy 15, then like 16, 17, 18, and then
Huge.
and then Untold Tales, you
Yeah.
know, and
Okay.
then I get to Marvel Team Up.
Oh,
Oh
that
my,
kind of chronological. Nice. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I
Right.
balled out. And so I'm still gonna do it. I stopped around the 90s just because like it's got busy and stuff like that. But I stopped. But I remember having to read those issues in places that you know what I speak of if you're a comic fan. I
Right.
don't
Of
want to
course.
do that. I have Marvel Unlimited, DC Infinite. I have it all. But sometimes I have no choice, Curtis. I have no choice.
Oh yeah, I know.
So anyway, I read that issue via that method, the honeymoon issue, being like, what? This is so weird because they even reference it in like a comic where her friend is like, here's 2 tickets to blah blah blah, which I'm like. And when I was rereading it for my friends group, I went, "Oh yeah, why is that issue not in here?" So I got to remember, it's not chronological order for the character. It's the title and then maybe
Yeah.
the direct tie-in. So that's a good point. That's why it's specs
and
not in
and
there.
that's something that so when Marvel first started Epic Collections, they only had 6 lines,
Okay.
and they were Marvel's longest running lines. It was Amazing Spider-Man, Iron Man, Captain America, Avengers, Fantastic Four, and Thor. Those were the 6.
Yeah.
And so the idea was to collect that title in an unbroken run, slotting in story relevant stuff, as they like for Craven's Last Hunt, as they need to. But it wasn't this is all Spider-Man all together. And I think that that has led to some mapping issues, of course, like you
Sure.
said here, where it's like, well, we can't put in everything because this is not this isn't Spider-Man, like everything Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think DC has looked at. And so when they were doing DC Finest, they're like, you know what? We're going to put it all together. That Batman volume is a perfect example
Yeah.
of them taking everything Batman related in 1980, whatever that was, 1989, no, 1986, and putting it all together. And you had one comment a little up there. They were wondering if something like Legends of the Dark Knight would appear in the DC Finest Batman, but we don't know. Um, they did state that they're going to try and be all encompassing for as far as characters go. the legacy characters, that is. And so to me, it would make sense for them to put Legends in, especially because that title becomes very heavily involved in the crossover era of Batman in the 90s. So why wouldn't they just stick it in there for sure?
So this is a
But
great,
honestly, this line is too new for us to know. We just don't know that.
great segue, Curtis. Thank you for doing this, because the weird thing, and now I don't know, we know each other a little bit. I don't know if you know that I grew up a Marvel zombie. Like, Marvel is what I do a Marvel MCU show I've done with my friend Sean for many years now.
Me too.
Yeah,
I'm a zombie as well.
yeah. Like I grew up on just Spider-Man's my favorite. He's my favorite fictional character of all time, and I adore. I mean, like I said, I could talk for eons about Marvel comics. So DC was always, I liked DC and I collected DC here or there, but it was very like, I liked Batman. I mean, who doesn't, right? But over the years, we got, my taste has developed and I got more, income to buy stuff, finally. When I became best friends with my good friend Chris Clow, and he is like the opposite of me. He grew up a DC guy. And so he kind of started. We
have a lot of fights.
Oh yeah, there's a fight of us on arguing about Crisis on Infinite Earths, which you should check out. It was pretty fun. But what's great about the Comic Binge, my YouTube channel, is that I've kind of really. I mean, I've always liked DC and got more DC over the years, but through this channel, I've like dove head first, and it feels like the last couple months I've just been nothing but DC content. But there's a reason why, though. And this is why I want to bring this up. This is a good segue. Is for years, DC, just going to be frank here, they straight up sucked for trades. It sucked. And it was awful. And I hated dealing, because I didn't know where to go. I'm like, besides Batman, like, I love other things other than Batman. I couldn't really get into anything. Even Superman was like, I couldn't find the right trades. I'm like, I don't know where to go. They have like, I've already read Secret Identity. I've read all seasons. I've read, where else can I go? That's it. Oh, thanks, DC. Like, whatever.
Yeah, they have their greatest hits, the most popular stories that they keep in print and putting out new editions. But then that's very limited for sure. Absolutely.
But then something's happened in the last I'd say more than 3 years, because I'll be honest. And people will think that I'm a shill, because and if people think I'm a DC shill out there, I'm gonna tell you right now, that was not the case for many, many years. With the current line of comic books they've been putting out the last 3 years, they are fantastic. Their new comics are fantastic. I've been really impressed, and I've gone on record. Black Label's been great, whatever. Then they start doing like, I'm like, they're the best. Like, they're beating the crap out of Marvel. Then they do the compact comic line. And I'm like, that's pretty goddamn awesome. And I started, I was like, listen, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to, just going to check this out. I've been blown away how I'm impressed I am with this line. I'm curious your thoughts, if you've gone down this road yet, because I went and bought Watchmen, because I have bad eyes. I want to see the small print, because if you know Watchmen, the print.
Oh yeah, it's a dense book.
It ain't easy to read. Sometimes, even if you're blowing it up. I got that, and I went and bought Far Sector, because I wanted to read that, but I hadn't read it yet. And I'm like, I want to read something that I haven't read yet, and I want to look at something that I have read many times. And I was blown away of how good it looked on the paper and everything on this. And I think the compact comic line is it could revolutionize somewhat of the comic industry a little bit, because I feel like this price point is impossible to pass up, and how the quality of this has been good. I'm curious to your thoughts, if you've got a chance to go down this line yet.
Well, I haven't, on purpose, because both that line and DC Finest were kind of announced around the same time, and I had to pick one. But what I really like about those compact ones is the size. it's obviously not going to be an overly comprehensive line
Sure.
where it's going to be reprinting the entire history of some of these characters or whatever, but they're going to be choosing stories that are going to make a some sort of impact with the general public.
Sure.
And to put them at that size, I think is a smart move, simply because they fit on bookshelves a lot easier. Library bookshelves, like school libraries and like Barnes and Noble and that kind of stuff, they're going to have a better time stocking, an easier time stocking those books than larger size, even regular size comics or omnis. And I think that's going to be a big draw for the book market. And I think that's where these ones are, where DC's really putting their focus, is making something that is more appropriate for the book market, not the direct market.
Yeah.
The price point reflects that, because then they can capture a more general audience, the size and everything like that. And I think, putting the characters' faces on there, they're obviously tying a lot of them to movie releases and that kind of thing as well. So I think it's a great idea. Am I going to buy any of them? Probably not, just because I will be able to get that content in other ways, or I have a lot of it already.
Sure.
Uh, but it's fantastic that they are reaching out to different reader groups, because there's something for everybody.
Yeah, it's weird because I didn't know if I would want to like go down that line and invest, because like I have a lot of these already. Like there's like Hush. I have like 800 versions of Hush. It feels like,
Right.
and but for me, I'm gonna swear here. So if you're stream, I apologize in advance. But I'm a bargain bitch. Like I will be like I wanted to get Far Sector. And I was gonna be able to trade, like look for half off at half price books or something like that, right? And I'm like, Far Sector for like $6 through in stock, hell
Yeah.
yeah! Like I'll
Yeah.
get
Yeah. You
that.
can't pass it up. Yeah.
No, like, and that's the thing is like, there's for me, even as someone who has access to Infinite and things like that, like I want to read it, like and this is what I did on one of my most popular YouTube shows, is actually my compact comic review. And I talked about how I brought Far Sector to the beach with me with my family, so I could like sit down and just read. And that's the thing about this. This thing costs like $8, whatever, on Amazon. This American Vampire book. I don't care if I beat the crap out of this thing.
Yeah, exactly. You lend it out. Your kids can read it. Maybe wait till
Not
your
this one,
daughter's
but
older
yeah,
for that one.
yeah,
but yeah, it lends itself to so many different applications. It's not
yeah.
like an omnibus where you're never going to take it on an airplane, or you're never,
God
like,
no.
you're too scared to let your kids touch it because it's super expensive or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that to me is what, like for instance, like American Vampire, I'd rather read it like this than on my iPad, because and even though I don't want to spend the money on it, like for like 20-30 bucks for the main trade or whatever, I always buy it like this. I mean, it becomes not just a new reader thing, but it comes like someone like myself, like not like, I'm not saying I'm like the rule. It's there's that gray area where there's people like us that they want to and read something, but they don't want to spend a bunch of money on it, like Kingdom Come. Like people may like, oh, I should finally go read Kingdom Come. Yeah, you should, but there's a a compact comic coming out of it. Well, if you love it, you can go buy the trade, the bigger trade, or like me, the Absolute Edition. Like this is an avenue that I think Marvel has to get on. It has to, because they have great stories out there.
They kind of have.
They did a little bit.
They have their digest size. They have comics that are the same size. Like they have the Mighty Marvel Masterworks, which are the same size as the compacts, I believe. But that focuses on the Silver Age material, which is maybe not as accessible to the public. But then they also have their Marvelverse line, which are thinner. They're maybe only 100 pages or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's definitely geared toward a younger audience.
Is
Like, you're
that
not going to find Craven's Last Hunt in
right?
that line or
Well,
anything
here's
like
my
that.
question: is that the one? Because I see there's a couple that I've noticed at stores, but here's the thing: they're still like, because I have a Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur book it's like I even compared it on my show. there's like I compared it to the Moon Girl one is a slightly bigger, and I
Big.
think it has it's like I think a little bit small. It's bigger in size, but it's actually I think small. I think smaller page count, and it's actually more expensive than this one. And I
Well,
but
yeah, these books, these compact ones are using a cheaper paper stock, I think, as well. And having the smaller trim size means they can fit more pages on the large sheet before they're trimmed. So
yeah.
you're using fewer massive sheets of paper, so that you keep the price point
Oh,
down. So yeah, I mean that. Yeah, Strange Academy was another one for sure that was
and that
digest
one's
size.
brilliant to be put on for
Yeah.
that's a tailor made. But I think that to me there should be a line that because because I was thinking like if I was in charge of Marvel, right? Like I'm a zombie, right? Because I started thinking, what are some of the main stories that I'd want like this that I think would be perfect for a general audience? I thought Birth of Venom. That's a perfect one. Like right, like that's one of my favorite trades of all time. That's a great trade. Put that in a compact comic size for like $10. That thing's flying off the shelves for hot cakes, man. Dark Phoenix. I would say Winter Soldier. Um, you know, I just started just rattling all these things off, and I'm like, man, these would be perfect for like these general stories that you do the compact line in would be perfect for
So
Marvel.
there's Marvel's starting that in a little while.
That's
What
good.
is that line called? I forgot because when you said Winter Soldier, that reminded me because that's one of the lead-off titles.
Okay, cool.
Um,
See, I don't know. I'm not tied in. This is my problem with being a comic book person in like YouTube. I want to be like all encompassing, but like I'm too like my interests are all over the place. My comics are my main loves, and I'll read comics and analyze the creative material. But as far as news goes, I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. So please educate me.
okay, so I gave you a link in the private chat there. You can share
Okay,
that link,
sure.
so we can take a look at this right now.
All right, I'll hold on. Let me. I
Yeah,
think
the my
someone.
Marvel Premiere Collection. That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. Someone just posted that, and I'll give me. Curse, keep talking while I get distracted and try to figure this out. So yeah, go ahead, continue, my
So
friend.
yeah, what you were saying, or what I was saying is that yeah, they are going to come up with their new line, and apparently, according to this article that we're going to share in just a second, they are half an inch
Yeah.
bigger than DC Compact Comics, which is the same size as the Mighty Marvel Masterworks. Like that I guess is the predetermined trim size that Marvel has established with the printer that they work with, probably
Hmm.
as well. So the lead-off titles
Yeah.
are Daredevil Born Again, which is going to tie in with the TV show that's coming up. Black Panther: A Nation Under Our Feet, which is the Ta-Nehisi Coates story. Winter Soldier as well, and then
Hmm.
Fantastic Four: Solve Everything, which that's an interesting one because apparently it is a streamlined version of the Hickman run. So it's like because that one's way
Oh
too
my
big to put
God.
in one volume, they've uh, uh, I guess edited it down to a single volume that's digestible. So that I'll be interested to see how that one reads. Um, but yeah, they kind of look cool.
I'm
I
not sure
think
what's
the
going
the
on here.
design. Yeah,
All right,
sorry, we're linked to
my
a
whole thing is
bleeding
all messed up.
pool.
There we go.
Yeah, Marvel Premiere Collection. So
There we
they're
go.
priced at 14.99, and that's I'm gonna
Oh
guess that they're
God.
probably using a nicer paper stock. Um, and they're also the trim size is bigger, so like I said, they probably can't fit as many pages on one sheet of paper as they can with the smaller trim size, as DC can with the smaller trim size. So, but still, $15, especially for all you Americans who are going to get it off of in stock trades or whatever, it's going to be still dirt cheap to get some of these books here. So scroll down and take a look at the covers. They have some of the pictures of the covers.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So my internet's going crazy. So I apologize in advance for the stream, everybody. So sorry if it's.
Oh, whoops. We just lost them. Um, well, maybe I don't know if I don't have sharing capabilities. Oh yeah, I do have sharing capabilities. So maybe I can do this for you until Paul comes back. Okay, here we go. So, oh no, it's not showing up. I don't have control over this. Paul's gone, and now I'm going rogue on my own. Well, let's see here. I don't even think I can highlight comments. He's left me with nothing. Well, I hope he comes back soon. But anyway, I can talk to you because I'm used to doing this kind of thing all by myself. Um, how many of you have been picking up the modern era Marvel Epic collections? I've been reading through these ones. This one's coming out in at the end of February, and I've started reading it now. Oh, he's back. Hey,
That
Paul.
that was crazy. My internet just went completely berserk. So sorry about that, everybody.
Well, that's
Conti-
okay. Um,
Continue.
well, we do you want to go back to the other
Yeah.
conversation?
Yeah. I know if I
Because
want to
then
finish. Yeah.
I do have some things I want to say about the
Oh,
modern era epics, but let's talk about if I don't know if you want to jinx your internet again by trying to show those covers, but they have a very um, it reminds me of the old Penguin classic trade like mass market paperbacks that they used to do
yeah.
back in like I don't know the 60s, 70s, 80s. They have that kind of classy design, and I think partly that's because they are distributed by Penguin Random House, so they want there's a little bit of kind of a nod to that.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think it's great that they are exploring this format as well, a smaller format.
Yeah, I didn't know this. I do wish they keep, because one of the things that I think that it's valuable is that the price point is it's a little more expensive than the compact line, which is fine. But I if it's a little bit bigger, nicer paper. But I got this is going to be a really stupid thing to say. I kind of like the way these books smell. Like the compact line smells. The paper smells so good. I don't know. I love it. I don't. Maybe
Now
I'm being
the
weird. Sorry.
paper is like a kind of a newsprint, right? In the DC
Yeah,
compacts.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
okay, I'm gonna go. Go ahead, please, please.
DC often their price points are just generally better than Marvel, I find, just in general over across all of their
Yeah.
lines.
So I'm gonna ask. This is gonna be a very random question, and people in the audience, if you're watching live or if you're not watching live, I want you all to comment on this because I'm curious. As a comic book reader, it drives me nuts, and I don't think people talk about it enough. It's glare. Glare when you read your book drives me effing nuts. And I don't get glare with these things because it's all newsprint. It's like, oh, it's so relaxing. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have to like adjust my comic through all because, of all the glossiness and everything. That does drive me nuts about reading books sometimes. Does that drive you nuts at all?
I mean, not enough that I mean, I notice it. I don't think it drives me as nuts as it does you, for
Fair
sure.
enough.
But I do
That's
understand what
fair.
you're saying. The newsprint doesn't have the glare just because of the nature of that type of paper.
So,
Epic
well,
collections, they are uncoated paper, but it's still because the ink sits on top of the paper, so the ink is what shines. Um, the ink doesn't soak into the paper like it does with newsprint. The modern era Epic collections, it's also uncoated, but they use so much more ink, and because it's full bleed, it comes off even more like it's definitely way shinier.
yeah. No, totally. And listen, like I deal with it, but it's just it does great on me every once in a while, depending on the book, right? But the Epic line isn't too bad with that. Some of the other newer trades feels like maybe it's just me. I don't know. The Epic line doesn't seem as bad as it usually is, but still,
Like I
if
said,
it's
they're using uncoated papers, so it's not going to have the same sort of glare as actual glossy stock, which some
oh,
of the
thank God.
new stuff is definitely glossy.
It's brutal. It's brutal. So,
Yeah.
we'll wrap up with a conversation with this. The world. So we were talking about the finest line, or we're talking about compact comics. So the DC is killing it with their current line of comics. They're great stories. I've been loving Batman, Superman, like all the current titles. Like I don't know if you've read War World by Superman's War World by Philip Kennedy Johnson. It's chef's kiss. So good.
Yeah.
So good. Go check it out.
What
And
year is that?
it's a couple years ago, like it came out.
Okay.
It is like Philip Kennedy Johnson kind of re-energized me for Superman in general. He's a fantastic writer. I love him. He's writing the new Hulk title, which has also been very good too. Um,
Oh yeah, I've really enjoyed that.
yeah. If you like this, go read Warworld. Like
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're a big Superman fan, but he's he's a big Superman fan. You could tell he knows this character because it's so good. Anyway, um, putting all these great comics out. They put the compact comics line out. I'm like, this is great. And then we start hearing about the finest line, which I heard naturally through you guys all on the Facebook group and everything. And I've I got really excited because this is ground floor, very whatever. I'm very. This is my take on it, and I'll get your take on it too. I obviously they can't do exactly what the Epic line does because DC is all over the place with their reboots and things like that. That being said, with this example we have here, I haven't read it yet, but I've looked through this and I think it's pretty damn brilliant. The comics they put in here, putting year 1 and 2 as a title, first of all, hasn't been done before. And the fact they finally did it feels like, why did it take them this long to do it? Right?
No, and it works so well as it's. I mean, year one isn't the first story in there, but
Sure.
it's pretty close to the beginning. So to have it kind of bookend with those two stories, with the kind of the origin of Jason Todd in the middle, it works really really well. And then it's also just such a neat snapshot of the era. And I've talked about this on Omar's channel. Because what really stood out is you have those first few issues, which are the first post-crisis issues of Batman,
Yep.
and Alan Davis and Mike Barr have Detective Comics at the time, and it's still like, even though it's Jason Todd, it still feels like a Silver Age Dick Grayson
Oh yeah.
Robin,
Mm-hmm.
and they're still fighting all of the classic colorful villains and such. And then all of a sudden you turn the page and year one starts, and it's a stark difference. It's like two completely different worlds. And I'm like, I can't just imagine what the people who were buying it off the racks were thinking when that issue came out, and it was a game changer. It changed everything. And and to have that, to read all of those stories together in the context of the era that they were written and published is really neat.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. And I love that because I was trying to figure out like how are they doing this exactly? And you said they're not really focusing on like we'll start like because Marvel can just start at one, right? Volume one and go from there. DC can do that, but they try to do that with like the golden age and the silver age line, and that's kind of seems like it's ending or has ended because the problem is those comics aren't as popular as the modern stuff.
And there's a lot. So if you are
Yeah.
talking about just, one of these size books, the Omnis, there are 10 Batman Golden Age Omnis, right? And so if you split all of those in half to make two of these size trades, you're talking about 20 volumes of just Golden Age Batman, and that's too much. No, I don't think there's a very small market that's going to want 20 volumes of that. So for them to jump around like the Epic collections do, to hop around to different eras, is the smart thing to do. Don't start from the beginning. You're not going to win over your fan base that way at all.
But what Marvel and maybe the Epic collection didn't mean they meant to do this, but it was almost like, oh, it worked better than almost they thought, was that by mapping it and they had like the volumes are kind of out of order or whatever, they were still able to jump around, capitalize on certain aspects of that run at the time of whatever they needed, but also you have built an audience for it that want it, even though it may not be a desirable era. I'm looking at Daredevil, perhaps, like some of the 90s
Exactly.
stuff. Like, I'm not talking about even like, computer ninja stuff, like from like, Born Again or Fall from Grace era, right? I'm talking
Yeah.
like, the J&D Mateus stuff that people like forget about, like, that was out of print for a while and then came back. Now those comics, because they built this whole, people are dedicated to buying all these books. They want these volumes, and there's an audience for it because they built it up the line,
Yeah.
not just the character, right? So
Yep.
when you
And
when you
those
do,
runs though are smaller though.
fair enough. Yeah, it's fair.
You
Yeah,
can buy 2 volumes of the Chichester era of Daredevil, and it's not a huge commitment, opposed to 20 volumes of Golden
well,
Age
right.
Batman, right?
But I guess what I'm saying is that once you build the lineup, you can then kind of dabble into like let's go with maybe some Golden Age, because I will say one of my main criticisms of, I think, of the DC Finest line is, why are you starting with Golden Age Superman with your first I think maybe it's more of a like a, they have to do it because it's like it's our first superhero. It's, it's,
Yeah.
I
You know
think that's
what
what.
though?
Go ahead.
I read that book and it is a lot of fun. I really like it. There is some absolutely, so there's my favorite story in that volume is because it's such a different Superman than you're used to. My
Sure.
favorite story is just this like 8-page story where Superman sees a um a drunk driver on the road, crashes his car into another car, and he says,
Hmm.
"That's it. I'm done with these drunk drivers. I'm stopping all of them." And he goes out there and he goes to the local radio station and says, "This is an announcement from Superman. I am going to make the roads safe for everybody. So don't you dare do anything." And he just goes on a rampage, like throwing cars all over the place. Like this was before, it was a wild time for Superman when they didn't really have his character nailed down quite
Right.
yet.
Yeah. And listen, I'm not. For the record, I want to make this very clear. I'm not. I'm not putting down anyone down for wanting to get the Golden Age stuff. It's just, for me, it's like, if you're gonna start this line off, you're starting off Batman with like, sorry, year 1 and 2, and like always, the Jason Todd, like some pretty classic. If you love Batman, those are some special times, right? Not just year 1, but like even year 2. I like year 2 more than most people, it seems like, and like Jason Todd, like that whole introduction's unique and weird, and post crisis, all that stuff. But like to start off with the Golden Age, it's just a weird thing when you look at the whole line as a whole. But I guess
Well,
at the same,
if you look at the line
that's
as a
true.
whole, this is why they're doing it. If you look at the line as a whole, the first 5 releases, the ones that they announced at launch, are of course Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, um, Justice League, and Flash. Okay,
Hmm.
those are the first 5. They had Golden Age. They had 1 volume of Golden Age, Superman, 1 volume of Silver Age with Flash, 1 volume of the '60s with Justice League, this one,
Okay.
1 volume of the '80s with Batman, and 1 modern volume with Wonder Woman.
Wonder
So they're
Woman. Yeah.
covering all of their eras in their first 5 releases.
Brilliant.
That's what
Yeah,
they're
I
doing
see.
with their launch.
Okay, that's okay. That's kind of brilliant then, because they're kind of covering all their bases. So as they go, they'll kind of switch the characters around, like go older Batman, or whatever, right?
Yep.
I
And
will
so the
say,
follow-up Superman book that's coming out in 2025 is the '70s Superman.
yeah,
So they're not sticking with Golden Age. They're jumping around.
sure, yeah, and trust me, like for whatever reason, Curtis, I'm actually gonna try to get majority of these Finest books. It's weird. I'm not sure why. But like, for instance, like Peacemaker here, like his original stories have been out of print for ages. And
Oh
like,
yeah.
so
DC
like
never cared about this character before the TV
well,
show.
sure, right? Well, because even, well, I will say this, because I thought like a lot of these Charlton characters were gonna get a resurgence in somewhat because of the Watchmen. You know, I thought maybe they, because of that the connection, they could sell it on that alone. But when I researched this back in the day, because I was interested in reading like the original Charlton, like the Question, back in the day, like all these different characters, and I realized, oh, like they're not really available, and Peacemaker was one of them, and I'm like, yeah, there's no way you can read them, but this is great that we're gonna be able to get this stuff now in the Finest line. And it's funny because my wife was like, "What do you want for your birthday?" My birthday is like a few weeks after Christmas, so I got like a ton of the Finest stuff. I was going through. I'm like, my other minor criticism is they're putting too much out at once, I think, because I was like, oh, cool. They released the first four. And I'm like, oh, crap. There's like six more like in like a couple months.
Yeah.
Like, what? I don't, that kind of bummed
Yeah.
me out. But I don't get this stuff for free, which I would
Well,
love
I
it for
think
free, but
I think that they obviously know that not everybody is going to buy everything, so they're putting a lot. Is that a reference to me or to you? Um,
probably to you. This is my boy Hobby.
okay.
He's yeah. He doesn't say it to me. I love Hobby, but yeah, go ahead.
Um, I they're putting out a lot in a wide variety of comment of eras and of genres and of characters because they want something for everybody.
Sure.
So they're just going to see what sticks. And I hope that the ones that are lesser sellers for them, that they don't just give up on them. Like I'm really excited about the Plastic Man volume that's coming out because I really like just the overly cartooning of Jack Cole. Um, but I can't imagine that that's going to be a huge seller. But I sure hope that there are follow-up volumes for that one. Oh, this is another one from the launch line that I forgot. They announced Catwoman at launch, and that fills the '90s gap. So they covered every decade with their launch titles because they wanted to have something representative of every genre, of
Yeah,
every era.
yeah, and you know, and this is an era that I know. Listen, I know Chuck Dixon's a very controversial character these days. For for whatever which way you slice it, but I'm gonna be real. I've always been a Chuck Dixon fan back in the '90s. I'm a '90s kid, so I'm Curtis. I'm
Good writer.
assuming you probably have some. I think he's a good writer, straight up.
He
I still
is.
do. And the Catwoman stuff it was good. His Robin stuff was great. So I mean, I'm excited to get this eventually and read it because even his like Moon Knight stuff, I was like, this is pretty good. Like I liked it. It's
Yeah, well,
different.
and he had a series in the '80s from Eclipse Comics called Airboy,
Alien,
which I really
oh,
really
boy,
like. Like that
Alien
one's
Legion too.
fantastic. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, he just has some um, political leanings that are not
Agreed.
as favorable, but
Yeah, agreed.
yeah,
Agreed.
he's still a good writer.
Yeah, for sure. And then for the record, I try to leave that stuff as much as I can out, and I still am a fan of him as a writer now. And even like I subscribe to his YouTube channel and watch his videos. I usually fast forward if he goes on the political rants. So this is again, it's just that's my personal thing. But I like him as a writer. I think he's a good writer. Yeah, man, this has been we could go on for ages. Like I know Curtis, me and you could just sit down and probably never
Probably.
stop talking about comics. Could
Yeah.
tell. This has been great. Um, I'm gonna have to have you on and bring you on. We should do like recaps of this stuff. I don't know because I love the fact that you have such a vast knowledge of this stuff, and you're so welcoming. You've cultivated a great group on Facebook that's like taking a life of its own, and then it was just great. And that means you've done something good if it's done that. So, um, yeah, man, like I'm excited to see you keep going and working in this. And again, like I love seeing what you're reading, what you're working on. So it's like keep it going. And maybe we'll have to do like a once they got like what feels like in 3 months they're gonna have like 50 world's finest titles out. But I'll have to see once you've gone down and maybe read a bunch of these and see what your like top 3 or 4 or 5 or our favorite finest
Great.
are. That'd be kind of
Sure.
fun because I think that would be because I'm not gonna be able to read them all, that's for sure. But I'm intrigued because I'm gonna try to get all of them. I'm gonna try. We're gonna see how this works. I'm gonna see if my wife doesn't divorce me for buying too many comics. For you can buy these world's finest lines. I'm like, leave me alone. Leave me buy my comics. So amongst all the other things I have to buy. So yeah, everyone who's gone and a lot of people have been watching for super appreciate everyone who has seriously means a lot to me. Um, yeah, yeah, those are cool too. The showcase books are too. Listen, I have like the black and white versions. Are those the showcase? Am I thinking of something
Yeah.
else? Yeah,
No,
yeah.
you're
So
right.
I got a bunch of those are great. I actually just picked up an essential Thor Volume 1 today for $5, which at my
Nice. Yeah,
comic shop.
I had a few of the essentials, but got rid of them when the epics came along. I still have the Godzilla one. I'm waiting for a Godzilla Epic Collection, if that'll ever happen.
I'm sure it will.
And I'm sure it will too, now that they have now that they put out the omnibus. And
The
then I have two showcase. I have Enemy Ace because I love Joe
I have
Kubert. I
Enemy
think he's
Ace too.
fantastic. And then also the Challengers of the Unknown is a great title from the
Re- re-
pre-Fantastic Four Jack Kirby.
oh yeah. So really quickly about Enemy Ace, we just read Creature Commandos,
Oh
which
yeah.
is written by the writer Robert. I can't pronounce his name. Um, I really liked when he took over for JMD Mateus basically, and I that those Creature Commando comics, and then someone said, oh yeah, he did his comics aren't meant to be read all at once like a binge like we did for and that's obvious like the way it's written because they're put out like like bi-monthly basically, and they're like they're kind of the same themes but they're pretty deep at times. He said that he does the same thing for Enemy Ace. I'm like, wait, hold up, he wrote Enemy Ace with Joe Kubert? I was like, I have that. That's amazing. And just really quick for people who don't know the not showcase. It's what's the DC version of the Essentials again? I totally forgot the name.
It's Showcase.
Yeah,
Showcase and Essentials.
I'm
Yep.
getting them all. My head's it's getting late. The one thing I'm going to say about these black and white comics, if you're a comic person out there and you're like, I don't know if I should get these, this is the closest thing you're going to get to the line art of these black and white comics that you're going to get. And let me tell you, reading these comics like Steve Ditko, even with color, color makes the Steve Ditko work, but seeing Steve Ditko in black and white, chef's kiss. Like Jack Kirby, listen, it's
Well, and
fast.
Joe Kubert is one of the reasons why I bought that Enemy Ace book, because his art in black and white is just stellar. He does a lot with shadows and his cross hatching and line work and such.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
why I think people are like I bought the Gil Kane Gwen Stacy Spider-Man Death issue essential for like $10. I'm like, yes, please. I will take this. Yeah, and I'm like looking at the art, I'm like, oh, this is so good. This is so good. Like I love color, but I learned very quickly as I started researching and reading more comics that black and white, the detail, the devil's in the details, Curtis, and we all know those details they pop in black and white. So
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides to that. One is that a lot of times the artists uh, they draw differently when they know that the work is going to be colored, and so uh, sometimes I think Steve Ditko is one of those guys who drew a lot more sparsely when he knew his work is going to be colored. If you see some of his work that was actually like made specifically to be black and white, a lot of his self-published stuff, especially, it's very different. He puts a lot more
sure.
detail into it because of that. And so, in that sense, I don't know that Spider-Man is better in just plain black and white or not, but other people like Gene Colan, Joe Kubert, a lot of those guys who I mean, this they put a lot of work into their black and white, regardless of what the colors are going to be. So those ones are like if you got Tomb of Dracula essentials, those ones are really really nice.
Ugh. And that's totally fair too, right? Because I also think because here's the problem though too that we fall into, and see we're already doing it, Kurt. I knew we were going to do this too. The problem is modern coloring also destroys detail even worse, I think, in my opinion, than the old coloring because you had such a basic palette of colors to choose from back in the day. So I would say yes, you're right. Like Steve Ditko may not put as much detail in those comics back then because obviously you're doing monthly and you're on a deadlines and different things like that, right? But like even now, unless like you have the awesome Penguin reprints of like those oh man, the color on that is exceptional. But like I would say you're probably getting better detail in black and white than the modern coloring at this point when you do the modern colors for these books. It feels like to me anyway, a lot of times. But you're right. Like depending on the
You
artist.
mean when they restore the old comics, like
Yeah.
with the Epic collections and such?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right. A lot of the time they have to scan from comics because they don't have the original artwork. So
Exactly.
they have to strip out the color, and then the lines are already they've already bled into the newsprint, so when you're scanning that stuff, it's not an actual thin pen line or anything like that. The I think a lot of the reason why the essentials look nice is that Marvel had a pretty good black and white film archive.
Oh yeah.
And so and that's why the black and white showcases or essentials exist, is because they had the black and white line work, but they didn't have adequate, film negatives or film stuff for the color files.
Yeah, and
Not
I think
yeah.
yeah, and I
Mhm.
think, and that's what that's why I'm always buying. And by the way, someone mentioned the 2000 AD comics. You're absolutely right. I just read Judge Dredd Volume 1 of 2000 AD, and I mean, you're talking about there's Matt Boland or whatever. I can't probably saying his name wrong. Dave Gibbons. Who else? There's tons of Ian Holm. Is that not Ian Holm? That's an artist. That's a actor. What's his name? Ian. He worked on Star Wars Droids for a minute. Forgot his name. I'm terrible with names, but like he did the Alan Moore book with him. The girl, what's her name? Halo Jones. He did Halo Jones. Yeah, like all that the black and white work, the detail work is so good, and you're gonna for me like that's why I'm always buying the essential editions. Not always, but like when I see one, I'm like, oh, I got to get that. Like I wanted to get the Silver Surfer John Byrne one. I saw at Half Price Books, but it was torn to shreds. I'm like, I can't do it.
That's too bad. Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Oh yeah, Byrne that would have been great. So anyway, Curtis, this has been fantastic. We're gonna have to do this again real soon because we could just talk about this stuff for ages, obviously.
Oh, probably.
So,
yeah.
But tell people. Obviously, you got you're linked up, and you got a big show again tomorrow for announcements. You said.
Yeah, join us tomorrow morning at 8:30 Pacific on Near Mint Conditions channel, and we'll be doing another round of Epic Collection announcements, exclusive right from Marvel straight to you. We'll be talking about the Epic Collections coming out in August and September of 2025. And you can find me at Epic Marvel Podcast. We have a Facebook group. If you search for Epic Collections on Facebook, you'll find it. And I got to design a new edition of a Tim Sale book called Billy 99 that's going to be in stores really soon.
Wow.
From Clover Press, the company that I work for. It's one of Tim's earliest books, one of the first ones that he did. He did it for Dark Horse back in the 90s, and we've got a new that was originally black and white, but we have a new color edition colored by Jose Villarrubia. And it looks stunning. So check that out. Ian Gibson, there you go. Yeah, that's right.
See, thank you, Ian Gibson. Thank you. I knew. Ian, yeah, he's great artist.
But yeah, that should be in stores. I think in January or February. Check your comic shop for that.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Listen, you do great work. Love you coming on the show. We'll have to promote your stuff more, and also. Just talk about comics because I love talking. I could talk about comics for eons. So, people, yeah, people who are new to the channel, please subscribe, like, all that jazz. Appreciate everyone who already has. Again, a lot of great interactions today. Thank you so much. You have a great audience, Curtis. People, if you're so gracious enough to follow us on here, appreciate it too.
Thanks everybody for chiming in the chat as well.
Yeah, it was awesome. And Chris isn't here, but I'll say it for him. Read more comics.